Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a breaking news report coming out from Russia. We're going to talk about Russian President Vladimir Putin, as Putin has responded to Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine's calls for a 30-day ceasefire in this war during a press conference tonight at the Kremlin. Take a look at your screen here. Putin proposes resuming negotiations with Ukraine on May 15th in Istanbul. Russian President Vladimir Putin has called for direct talks with Ukraine, saying they should start without delay as early as May 15th in a televised late-night address from the Kremlin. So this was video footage coming out from the Kremlin tonight as Vladimir Putin held his speech, and I believe he was about an hour and a half late. I'm not sure why, but he was extremely late to this press conference tonight. I know it was being held really late in the evening over there. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I thought that was interesting. What else is interesting is it's going to be held on the day of my birthday. My birthday is actually on Thursday, May 15th. I'll be 34. So very interesting. We could possibly hear that this war could be coming to an end or maybe getting closer to an end by the time I hit my birthday. So I want to show you guys some information coming out regarding this speech tonight and what some of the things he was mentioning aside from holding these negotiations and talks with Ukraine on May 15th. So if you're wondering where Istanbul is, that's in Turkey, okay? So Turkey would be helping mediate these talks. So let's jump on over here to UNN. This is a Ukrainian news outlet. It says here, Putin proposed a date and place for direct talks with Ukraine and made other statements. You can see the date here, May 10th, 2025. Vladimir Putin said that Russia is ready to resume peace talks with Ukraine on May 15th in Istanbul. The dictator claims that Kiev sabotaged previous ceasefire initiatives. Okay, here's a picture of him today while he was speaking in Moscow. And it says right here, Moscow proposes to resume peace talks with Ukraine on May 15th in Istanbul. Russia has never refused dialogue with the Ukrainian authorities. This was stated by Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin at a press conference in the Kremlin. Is reported by UNN with reference to the official Telegram channel of the Kremlin TASS news agency. Okay, and it says the details. At a press conference in the Kremlin on the night of May 11th, dictator Vladimir Putin told reporters that Russia has repeatedly taken the initiative to cease fire, but Kiev violated the moratorium on strikes on energy facilities and did not observe the Easter truce. According to the Kremlin dictator, Kiev did not respond at all to the ceasefire proposed by the Russian Federation before Victory Day and almost immediately launched large-scale attacks. So I will note that is something he mentioned a lot tonight. We're going to go over some of the details of things that he brought up, and he really was just pounding Ukraine with all these accusations of saying that Ukraine did not recognize multiple truces, that some of them were actually enacted between Ukraine and Russia, like the 30-day energy truce. He's claiming that Ukraine attacked, energy infrastructure in Russia multiple times and whatnot. We had the Easter truce and then also the 3-day Victory Day truce. Yeah, he's really coming out a lot tonight and just blaming Ukraine. So it makes you wonder what that could be a precursor to and why he might be doing that as we get closer to these talks coming up this week, potentially on Thursday. So it says right here, the main points of Putin's statements on ceasefire initiatives. So the first one here says, Russia has repeatedly taken the initiative to cease fire, but they were sabotaged by Kiev. The second one is Kiev has repeatedly violated the 30-day moratorium on strikes on energy facilities. Okay, so you're saying here repeatedly violated the 30-day truce, okay, on energy facilities multiple times. Russia conveyed to its Western colleagues its position on a ceasefire on Victory Day. Russia did not rule out extending the 3-day May truce depending on Kiev's reaction. Thought that was interesting because Russia stating that they were open to extending this 3-day truce depending on Ukraine's reaction to it, but we know that Ukraine did not agree to a 3-day truce at all during this Victory Day parade, so that's probably what he's talking about there. Also says here the armed forces of Ukraine violated the Easter truce 5,000 times, okay? That's what Russian President Vladimir Putin is saying. You guys can let me know if you believe that. And then the next one here says Kiev made 5 attempts to attack the Russian border in the Kursk and Belgorod regions and attacks in other areas of the special operation during the truce. Okay, so that's more recent. We've been talking about that. The Kursk region and Belgorod, Ukraine has been attacking those areas. So he's stating here that even during the truce, Ukraine was still attacking the Kursk and Belgorod regions on Russian territory. Also says here, Russia repelled all attacks by Ukraine during the 3-day truce. The armed forces of Ukraine suffered very heavy losses when the Russian army repelled their attacks during the truce until Victory Day. He also publicly called the full-scale invasion of Ukraine a war for the very first time, which is huge. We've never heard him refer it to as war. He usually calls it a special military operation, or SVO/SMO is kind of these the three-letter words or acronyms that come out to label this as a special military operation. So here's a statement right here. There is fighting going on now, a war, and we propose to resume negotiations. Okay, it says here, said the president of the Russian Federation. So yeah, he did label it a war for the very first time, which is interesting, again, as we get close to these negotiations very soon. Finally, it says here, during his speech, Vladimir Putin never once mentioned the initiative of the Coalition of the Willing regarding a 30-day ceasefire, which is due to begin on May 12th. I thought that was interesting also because that's a huge part of this. We know Ukraine does want to deploy some sort of European contingent into Ukraine if we get a ceasefire deal. He didn't mention anything of that at all, and that's something Ukraine is heavily working on right now with European partners. As a result, Vladimir Putin proposed to resume peace talks with Ukraine as early as next week. On Thursday, May 15th in Istanbul, he clarified that these are negotiations that were suspended in 2022. Okay, so this is pretty crazy. I mean, I actually wasn't expecting Russia to come outright and just say, hey, we're open to negotiating with Ukraine, but it looks like they are willing to start some talks here very soon, coming up on Thursday, May 15th in Turkey. Okay, so there's more information down here talking about some other things we've already discussed throughout this week. It's not really in regards to what Vladimir Putin had stated here tonight, but I just wanted to give you guys some details and let you know what came out from this conference. Basically, what I was hearing, I didn't really watch the actual conference that he held tonight, but many people were stating that it was just really a waste of time, and he said a lot of things that he said in the past wasn't really anything different, but some of the major takeaways here was that, you know, he's open to negotiating with Ukraine directly. These are direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul starting on Thursday as soon as May 15th. And then also referring this to as a war now and no longer a special military operation. Then on top of that, just really coming out with a lot of accusations saying that Ukraine repeatedly violated multiple truces. So it makes you wonder what Vladimir Putin could be setting up for as we get closer to these talks. Maybe there's a reason he's bringing all that stuff up, because we're going to hear some major developments once these talks actually get going. So let me know what you guys think about all these details down below in the comment section. But that's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.